dodging like strays. Climbing out the gutter, I am real like the frame. Wrapped in shadow, but they shine like noon. For hearts beating, sink, break the.
All right, welcome back to the Kane's Effect podcast, season 1, episode 23. We have one more episode that we're going to be shooting for this season, and then it's going to be a wrap for season 1. And then we'll come back season 2 next year. Without further ado, I wanted to bring on Dr. Matthew, and he's going to explain why he thinks men feel behind in life. So just tell us a little bit about yourself, Dr. Matthew, what you do, where you're from, and, what you're currently doing now.
Yeah, so I'm Dr. Kane. You can just call me Matt if you like. I'm a licensed psychologist. I was born in Baltimore originally, but raised outside of Philadelphia in Pennsylvania before I went on to do my undergraduate in New York, my master's at Seton Hall up in North Jersey, and then my PhD all the way out at University of Kansas in counseling psychology. And then finally finished up with my doctoral internship down at Vanderbilt University in Nashville. But now I've since returned to Pennsylvania, where I practice as a private practice clinician mostly. So I do individual, couple, and family. So one of my specialties is relational health. Another one is men and masculinity. So you'll see me doing therapy. You'll see me doing different sorts of consultation for entities, do different writing on my next book. Some speaking engagements, that sort of thing. So pleasure to be here, man.
Yeah, it's good to have you. We try to bring on different men, all men walk of life, just anywhere from psychiatrists, psychologists, clinicians, just regular everyday men too. Just the kind of men that's watching us is going to resonate with one of us. So that's really important to me, be able to be relatable. What got you into being a psychiatrist?
So psychologist, what got me into this? Growing up, definitely, I was raised in a majority white area, found myself falling into a lot of the stereotypes that they had written for me. And I know you and I at the top were talking about education and the schooling system. I think a lot of my teachers, though some coaches were really great role models for me, others actually. Growth in a number of ways. I think some peers as well, that sort of thing. So I just absorbed the athlete mentality. So I did do Division I track and field undergrad, and my first love was basketball, and it was great. But I really didn't uncover that I had a passion for being a psychologist or just a proud nerd in a number of ways until I got to college, and I made my first, we'll say, academic mentor. I did my undergrad at Wagner College, and my first academic mentor was a psychologist. He was one of these sort of far out existentialist, phenomenologist dudes who really chew on a question before you get an answer. You type like you ask something and then they don't say nothing for like seconds, and you're like, what are they thinking? I kind of love with the idea of psychology. I recognize it was I always thought about life, and there was names for these things. There's names for observing the different things that people would do. There's names for understanding the relationships that people had. So I went on to do my master's in marriage and family therapy before my PhD in counseling psychology. And I got to tell you, man, from jump, even when it was hard, I still loved what I did. And even today in the office, I'll have some clients later today. I still love what I do. A remarkable privilege, I think, to be allowed to walk with people through sometimes the most difficult days that they had, and seeing them come out on the other side of it. And then the sort of throughout the process, you get to kind of admire that sometimes on the other end, or be with someone in those difficult instances and see them really step up for themselves.
Yeah, that's very important. I think somebody that actually does care about their patients or clients a long way, because I never saw a psych. I saw a clinician, because I was battling some mental health issues a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
I really know in my life, and just a lot of family issues that was going on, and I needed to get the help. But I think it's really important that you feel comfortable when they're going to these sessions. So what are some of the techniques that maybe you kind of in some of your sessions to make them feel comfortable and make them, well, not make them want to talk, but just have them So it's just an organic conversation. It's not for some of the techniques that you kind of in there.
Well, first, bro, I'm so happy you did that for yourself. I'm being real. The techniques I use, I guess my field would say integrative, right? I use a multitude of, we can say, theories and different approaches and this sort of thing. But honestly, I practiced being myself as best I can. A lot of what I do too, just in life, derived from my own spiritual practice. So I practice Zen, which is a form of Buddhism, and is at the core of that. So I find like a kind of perfect field for that, you know what I mean? And then it's okay, well, how do I walk with compassion in understanding someone else's situation, right? Like how do I really implement, if you remember the ancient philosopher Terence, might have been one of the first Black philosophers to known. He said, I am human and let no human experience be alien to me, right? What does it look like for me to just sit in a space of non-judgment and validation and understanding, also being myself? And I think that is often the hardest part of a journey of a psychologist, of a therapist, and also just of any human being is, I uncover moment to moment who I'm aspiring to be, and how do I hold on to that lightly enough so that I'm still always open to feedback, so that I'm still always open to growth or change, but that I don't lose myself in the wash of things and of people who are saying that you should be a certain way. And I know since we're talking about men and how they might feel left behind, that's often a big component of that.
Yeah, I definitely do agree with that. I want to kind of into the topic of why men actually do feel left behind. I think personally, from my perspective, I think Black men specifically, the system was already against them. Racism, just all of the thoughts and beliefs that you can't do anything because we're Black already. It's just fed into a system systematically where we were taught to believe that you can't anything on our own or be financially well off unless we have different sponsors or different from the white man. And I think that that's just farthest from the truth. I think it's a lot of Black men that they feel like their voices are not being heard because the bottom pigeon of the society less than, and Black men are just getting tired of just working so damn hard in their life. Speaking for me too, and you just don't have nothing to show for it sometimes. And even if you do go to college, even the American dream, going to college, getting a good education, just feels like the job doesn't pay enough to financially be sustained, be financially well off on your own, and provide for your family or whatever aspirations you have for your life. So those are just some of the things that I think why left behind, and just even the slave mentality, working for someone else your whole life, and then maybe you may or may not have something to show for that. It's so many, and then even our own beliefs, maybe doubting ourselves, that we're not good enough, culture system, all of these things that even society's beliefs about us that we're not shit and that nature, or people, all Black men just sit up and just drink and all day. All of these different beliefs kind of weighs on the Black man. It's like, why should I even try? Because the system's already stacked against me. So what's your perspective about that? Like,
you were cooking, man. You want to keep going? You hitting on a number of things that were very meaningful. But back to where you were at in the beginning, right? This slave mentality idea, and that has been embedded within America's history. That's still very prevalent, right? If we go back into history, we can remember that the justification for keeping slavery, right, was one that white people wanted to label as benevolence, right? Like, no, it's not that I don't want you to be free. It's that I know you can't care for yourself on your own. So please come under my roof and I will make sure I can take care of you, right? So they kind of themselves in this Christian pulpit as well justify that plight. And that's a whole nother conversation I know we don't have time for, but yeah, it continues today, right? And we see now an interesting split. Some Black folks who found themselves, we consider current sociopolitics, from this, what they thought was victim mentality that some people were pushing. And that's really not it at all, right? When we talk about the different Black power movements, or when we talk about things like diversity, equity, and inclusion, when we talk about anti-racism, we're not actually talking about saying that, oh my gosh, Black people just need so much help. They're incapable. They are the victims. No, it's not that at all. It's to say that we are actually continuing to be survivors, and we now having able to pull ourselves up, been able to sustain ourselves, been able to get ourselves quite literally out of shackles, and on the precipice of trying to build generational wealth, have said, you know what? I'm tired of this shit. Like, I'm going to continue to work. And at the same time, I'm not going to let you continue to get away with these things. This is not okay. I don't want them for the next generation to come, right? So you see a lot of people who are using conspiracy theories or misinformation to try to justify that sort of approach isn't good. But really, when we look at it, this identity development within Black folks is absolutely for them to find themselves in what we'll say in the psychology world, a reduction of negative symptoms, right? Which means a reduction of things like anxiety, depression, and stress, and an increase in positive functions. That would be things like increasing well-being, increasing joy, increasing positive spirituality, all of these things, right? So when we look at just in a general sense, why men might feel left behind, and this is before we even do a consideration for race. I know I'm transitioning here a bit, but I want to make sure I can say this. It's very much a both and I've observed, which is we as a society have done a very poor job of loving men. This is before we get, again, into any form of identity beyond gender. We've done a horrendous job of it. And men have done a poor job of understanding the role they had in this as well, particularly white men, because they're the most among us who hold the most privilege and power, right? Cisgendered, middle to upper class white men throughout history have held that power. So it's this interesting position where you often see, especially now, this like the loneliness epidemic that everyone says, and they want, oh my gosh, they want everyone to feel so bad for men. And when they say feel bad for men, what they really mean is feel bad for white men. Their lives are just so hard, and et cetera, et cetera. It isn't to say that, hey, you might not struggle. It isn't to say that you might not have difficulty, right? Because what we know is that power and privilege, whiteness as a construct, traditional masculinity as a construct, harms everyone, men included. Right? So it isn't to say that you aren't having trouble. It is to say that, hey, for you to receive my empathy, right? And this is, I'm speaking as if I were the world. If you were to receive my empathy, I want first for you to have an understanding that you or the people before you were a part of this system that is perpetuated. It is a both and not an either or. And I recommend to anybody who want to learn more about this, right? We do our best to read some of the Black feminists, right? Check out Bell Hook's work. The best book on masculinity ever written, in my opinion, was Hook's book, The Will to Change. Right? And in it, she challenges contemporary feminism at that time, which had really become known as a lot of white female and excluded a lot of other things. And instead says, hey, there's a lot we need to do from a feminist standpoint. And at the same time, we need to recognize our role in that. So I think that that is a huge part in terms of why men feel left behind, because they're finding themselves on this interesting sort of hamster wheel of trying to achieve this identity that is unachievable. To become a traditional man, Rio, who's a psychologist, but I know he's in my field, used to say this, like, to become a man, you have to slay fucking dragons every day. And the minute you don't slay a dragon is the day that you're not a man anymore. You have to do all of these things. I just saw this video on Instagram, and it's this guy, pressing 225, and then the clip right after it was like, after he finished the 225, he's like, oh yeah, now I'm not gay. And it's like, I see you're trying to be funny here. And there's a real subtle to those kinds of comments that are increasingly harmful, especially as we look at what's happening in the world now, right? This manosphere, it's trying to get men to continue to buy into this notion of rigidity. So they're continuing to fall behind, right? If we just look at men and women, are allowing themselves to expand beyond what a traditional role of a woman is. We'll see what happens with the current administration and everything, and the current socio-political pull to try to make women into more traditional forms like they did with men. But women are saying, hey, no, I can be emotionally expressive. This doesn't make me crazy. And I also can work in fields that might not be traditionally considered female, right? I can do all of these things. I can be human, is what we hear with that. Men are saying, I don't really know. If I open up emotionally, I'm gay, but I do feel better, but I'm gay, so I'm going to go back down. I guess you have a passion for baking. Am I going to make enough money? I need to be the breadwinner. Otherwise, I'm going to feel really insecure. So I'm just going to go and be something else. And I know I'm being very reductionistic in a way, just to simplify to make this point. But I think that's one of the largest reasons that men are feeling behind, is because, again, we are continuing to put them, and then they are also doing it to themselves, into these boxes that they must fit. They must do this. Otherwise, something bad happens. So what I'll say is, and this is often when I work with men, one of the most important things to do, whether you're a man and you're watching this, you have a man in your life whom you love, you're a clinician or whatever the case, one of the most important things when we work with men is not about teaching them what not to do. Rather, what's most important is that we help them understand who they want to become. This creates hope and aspiration. What does it look like for you to walk towards something, right? We call this in psychology approach-based goals, positive psychology, right? How do I have something that I can literally aim towards, right? And isn't that something that might be a nice little transition for a man too? Be like, oh, you got this thing in the distance that you can go run after, bro. Like, you will get that. Instead of this more harmful, scarcity, fearful mindset of, hey, don't be that thing, right? Don't be against women, right? We don't want you to be, but like, sexist. Don't be that. Don't be this. And then the question is left for them with this whole, then who am I and what am I supposed to be? I don't know what to move towards. I just know I need to run away. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that does make sense. It's a lot of women that are not really supportive of their husbands or their others. We hear about this notion that black men ain't shit, like they're never going to be anything. And that kind of feeds into black men's minds after so long of hearing the same thing. And to put a positive spin on this, I think we can achieve anything that we want to achieve. It all comes down to persistence and working hard to get help. You can't do everything on your own, and you do have to reach out to people for help if you are struggling. At least take the initiative to better your life. You don't want to go to college, you can go to trade school. If you don't want to go to trade school, you can start your own business. Like, have so many tools and resources today that it's insane. It's up to you. You have to put in the hard work. I've been doing my talk show for 3 years. While it's not earning me money financially, fulfilling for me, fulfilling me. And everybody has their terms of like successful for them and what's not successful for them. And work hard, going to school, got an IT degree, hopefully going to go back and get my education degree, like working on things that, feeling for me instead of society telling me, you're supposed to do this, that, and that as a black man, what they have to say, because I'm going to do what I want to do and what makes me happy. And sometimes you need that outside criticism too, to kind of move into somebody that you want to be. So if a lot of people telling you, you can't do this, do that, prove them wrong. Them that I can do this and that your opinion doesn't dictate what I do. Because I had a guidance counselor, and she told me that just sitting in her office when I was in the 12th grade. No, when I was in 11th grade. And she said, based on your results, I just don't see you're going to college. I just don't see that you have the potential to do that. And I was really smart. I just didn't always pass every test that I was given to me, but I wasn't dumb either. I was working with a tutor, forever grateful for him He's probably deceased right now because he's an older man now. But I worked with him religiously from 8th grade all the way into college. And that was a long time to have a tutor. And he taught me about persistence, like to quit even when things get hard. And a lot of people will quit when things get hard. Like you either have that in you or you don't. But that doesn't necessarily mean it can't be taught. Something that you're going to have to work towards to continue to build something for your life if you really want to be successful. So while all of these negative connotations is against us, all of these beliefs and ideas of what a Black man should do, that doesn't necessarily mean that you can't happiness and the things that make you happy and be successful in your career. Like put a lot of emphasis on grinding until we kill over. Like why I believe it's important for men to actually up in life and succeed. You don't have to kill yourself to do that. Like yourself mentally, putting in large hours, 60, 70 hours on the work day. Instead, work maybe part-time or 40 hours and that's it. And then on the side, build up your businesses or use the money that you get from your job to fill your happiness, your passion. And I'm always going to do that. I know social media has glamourized this idea that we have to have these expensive cars and Lamborghinis and things that just so unrealistic to the point where it's like sometimes it's unattainable because you don't think you're ever going to get to that level. But you can have a successful life just doing something that's basic, like getting a good education, your own business, working with people, networking. I've met a lot of men, so I work with a lot of people that kind of need to get to where I want to be at in my life. So don't count your chickens before they hatch. There's a lot of combinations of a lot of different things that men can do to still feel successful while they're even not where they want to be at in their life, if they're working towards it, to say the least.
Absolutely. I think that was very well said. And ourselves to come up with our own definition of success that isn't necessarily in line with, or maybe it is similar to, sort of Americanized ideal, right? Like do what I do because I'm passionate about it. And even then, right, I need to be mindful of when to take a break. Because even though I love what I do, it's still work. It takes effort. And me having space from that actually can increase my effectiveness when I come back to it. So, yeah, I think there's a lot that we as men can do for each other. Hold each other accountable for that, trying to be the change. The one in your group that maybe brings up, like, I'm struggling with that until I went to therapy. It doesn't need to be, huge sort of shift, but be the one who's willing to go there and have different kinds of conversations. Or
Yeah. And the last thing I want to bring up before we go, because I know we're getting close on time. A lot of Black brothers that feel like maybe Black men don't really support each other like we should. I don't think that's true to some degree because it's this toxic masculinity that if I'm with another man and if I hug him, I'm gay, and thanks to these outside stigmas that could be farthest from the truth. Because I have some good Black brothers and we give each other dap and we hug and we ask each other, are we okay? I think there's a good, if you have a good support system too, that's, on to kind of to where you want to be at, going to help you to not feel left behind either in life because you have that accountability partner or you have that accountability of your friendships. Kind of you to whatever thought you might have about yourself or society told you that you can do this, but sometimes brothers don't have that support system. So my last question to you is like, other avenues could they if they don't have the bros they grew up with or college, or they just have no type of support system? What would you say to those brothers that don't have people?
First, my comment would be, I feel for you. That's a very difficult place to be in. I found myself in somewhat of a place like that when I was younger, trying to find out who I needed to be beyond the stereotype of being Black. I would say that if you can recognize that I don't have this support system, or these aren't the kinds of supportive people I want, first, remind yourself that's a good awareness. You are already starting off with this strength. That is to say that you are aware that the situation you're in isn't the one you want to be in. And hey, you're allowed to change your situation. You're allowed to do that. You don't have to keep people in your circle any means, right? You are allowed to make that transition. Try to find some creative ways, perhaps. So one thing that I always love to do, always being mindful of how to build yourself up. Are there different things that you want to explore on your own time, whether it's reading, listening to different podcasts, listening to different people talk or explore topics that you're interested in, finding maybe different online platforms or expanding yourself in that way to find community. I also really appreciate mentorship. So if you're in school, try to find some teachers or something that you might want to talk to after class and expand, because a lot of them have other networks that you can tap into, right? That you can stay in touch with. Like, I can't tell you how many people I stay in touch with to this day that I used to work with in my undergrad, in my master's, my PhD, et cetera, et cetera. You continue to just find those circles, and then always be mindful, especially since the internet continues to expand. Don't feel like you need to make your life look like the people on your phone. They all lying, not what it looks like. You don't need to have this plethora of friends and everyone, everything about each other. You can have a couple friends. In the words of Chris Rock back in the 90s, he's like, when he was talking about his friends, he's like, I don't got 6 friends now. You know what I mean? Like, you don't need to have that. It's more about meaning than about quantity. So find those people who do fit the kind of person you want to be. This old saying that says, be your friends and I'll show you who you are. Right? So again, you have this awareness. This isn't where I want to be. Hey, what do you got to do? What can you do to try to transition away from that? Who are some people that you might be able to trust or build off of or expand yourself into, even if it's in these small little nuggets, and then just continuing to see that seed grow? Oh, I think you're muted.
That's all the time we have for today. I do want to thank you, Matthew, for coming on here, for being vulnerable, your advice, because it's going to help in that struggle and just feel like they have another avenue in their life. And I always say that, where you came from is what you're going to. I don't believe that because you came from the hood or you didn't have a good dad that you can't still be successful in life.
Right.
So that's all I have for today. I just want to thank you again. Please keep in touch. If you have any of your businesses you want to add to the LinkedIn, please send them my way so I can add them to this video that when we post it. It's going to go out. It's been a pleasure, though. I do thank you for doing the work that you do.
I appreciate you for having me, bro. I got to run, but thank you again. And shout to everyone out there who's